Welcome to the podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time, a CASSource production. In this episode, I chat with Zuzana Dobro, founder of the Who Method. This episode exists because of CASSource. CASSource is your content team. You know how many business leaders need help communicating their story? That's what we do. Content strategy, creation, and distribution for business leaders. This provides opportunities, relationships, and a platform for you and your business. Why do we do this? Because at CASSource, we exist to help you create and share amazing content. And yes, you should have a podcast. We'll help you. Learn more by visiting CAScontent.com. Zuzana is a former communist kid who left the Eastern Bloc with very little. She wanted to pursue her passion for design. Working across the creative industry in London, she realized the big corporate world wasn't for her. So she quit and traveled solo for 2 years around the world. This led to her calling and her entrepreneurship lifestyle. Today, Zuzana helps business leaders gain clarity and reach alignment with their dream customer. And with that, we welcome Zuzana Dobro. There's a challenge that many business leaders or many people have in general about opening up, because we all hear about it, right? You all hear, well, you can have social media, you can have a blog, you can have a podcast, you can start telling stories, and it sounds great, but it's like, wait a second. So I'm going to start using this microphone and recording my voice and telling these stories, and who's going to care about this story? And I feel like I'm just talking to myself sometimes, and it's very challenging. And there's extreme versions, right? Like you have these stories that you have, but everyone has a story somewhere. If they dig deep enough, there's a story in there, and it can help a few people. And then ultimately can help themselves. I think it can grow their business because it's going to create attention. It's going to create interest and intrigue. And they're going to say, wait, I think I could talk to that person. I just want to have a conversation. It's not some transaction that we have to talk about. I don't have to sell them anything, or I don't have to go find some deal every single time I pick up the phone or start messaging someone. But you can open up the door to conversations. And that's what content is. And I think what you had just talked about is so important, that you were willing to say, wow, you know what? People are telling me this, and I do need to open up. And you've been doing it for a little bit. Obviously, you've been telling these stories, maybe without the microphone on, without marketing or websites, what have you. But it's a different thing when you open it up to this world. And I'm just curious for you, have you seen it start to play out to say, wow, we want to talk to Zuzana. We're interested in her story. Are you seeing that yet? I mean, you know it's going to come, but are you seeing it from a standpoint of, obviously you have that with your business. Are you seeing it through the content that you're creating that's opening up doors for you?
So directly, not yet. Maybe I'm not paying attention to it, but I'm getting a very similar comments, and people are just basically telling me like exactly what you just said. Like, this is very different from what I'm used to. Your story is very different. So I think it's just what I'm really doing. I'm creating moment for me to be consistent, and everything else that will come with it is welcome. But this is really for me to start expressing myself much more openly into the public, and just really start sharing what's on my mind. You know, what's my background and why do I think about certain things in a different way? So I'm at the beginning of this journey. Let's put it that way. I started that adventure basically, and I'm really just trailblazing my way through it. And I have a trust in the universe, and I know that whatever needs to come into my way will be sent my way.
Yeah.
So that's how I approach it.
Yeah. And you said something that's not directly, and that's what this thing is. And it's also not just about growing business, because a lot of things that you're talking about are this self-betterment. You said it in a way of like this journey that you're on, or this adventure that you're on. And there's so much you just learn from having these types of conversations, that you learn about yourself and that you can apply in so many other ways. And I also feel like even if it's the people that you're working with, or the staff or the team that you have, or people that are just getting to know you, well, guess what? Now they can go listen to this podcast, and that's how they can get to know you. That's how they can understand you. Maybe they don't like your story, right? There's these side benefits that you get from doing this, from creating this content. And it's an amazing thing. And it just continues and evolves. And it's a way for you to talk through it. It's therapeutic in many ways. And so, when I asked that question about, have you seen it directly, or have you seen an impact on your business? And after I say it, I'm thinking, well, that's not what we do it for even, but it's interesting anyway, because I think people jump into it a lot of times, say, how will it impact my business? Well, that is one way. You can grow your business. You could also sustain your clients. You can use it as a recruiting tool later on when someone wants to learn, hey, I might want to work for Zuzana. What is she all about? What does she sound like?
Yeah.
What does she talk about? I think that's all very important. And I want to jump around here a little bit, but I do want to back up a second. And I want you to provide a little bit of a context on the main thing that you do. There's a lot of different things that you do, and now you're podcasting and you're helping people out. But if you were to just sum it up really quickly, what is the main thing that you do?
So to sum it up in a very simple one sentence, I solve challenges. I'm a problem solver. And that comes from my experience as being a designer. So my commercial experience, working as a customer experience and user experience designer and consultant. And that really just led me into the bigger and bigger and more complex questions that came along. And every single time, there is something that is interesting to me, and I really want to dig and dive deep. And it depends what level it is. And it really depends what is the complexity and what is your skill, right? And what is your natural talent of being able to really help people and companies or teams to get unstuck or to move to the next level, or to think completely, out of their normal habitual way of thinking. And this is all about conditioning. So essentially, that's who I am. I work closely with people, and I'm really interested in people and helping them. And this could have different forms, different types of approaches, but essentially, it still loops back. I'm a problem solver. Yeah. That's who I am.
Yeah. I like how you put all that problem solver and conditioning. Like, it takes time and you have to work at it. It's like an athlete. They have to condition themselves before they take on the season and do all the different things that they're going to do and play all those different games. You have to condition yourself. And again, like I said, I do want to bounce around. And there's something that I saw on your website and that I've heard you talk about in podcasts. I think it's very important because it's interesting. Right now, I'm not in my hometown and we're in the middle of this pandemic. I took my two daughters. I have three kids. I took my two daughters, and we're in Asheville, North Carolina right now. We needed a change of scenery for a little bit. My youngest daughter's like, we hadn't left. It's hard. And I think it's important to just go somewhere else. It's about a 2.5 hour drive, a little bit less, to come here, and you change your environment a little bit. You take a look around, you see the mountains, you do all these different things. I'm recording this podcast in a room. We just got an Airbnb kind of last minute. And you talk about travel a lot. You've been all over the place. So this is a very simple travel. And this is an interesting time because it's very hard to travel. You talk about the importance of travel. And I want you to I just thought it was interesting that here I am and I get to talk to you, who's someone who believes so much in travel. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that.
Sure. Just to say a little bit of story, why am I so passionate about travel? And it really goes back to my childhood, where you probably know, but listeners don't, that I come from Slovakia, which used to be part of Czechoslovakia, which used to be under the communist regime. So I was born in communism. And I am a communist kid, literally. And, during my upbringing, I was always told, like, I cannot travel. I cannot go and see Paris. I cannot go and see America. Forget about it. Like, no, this is not going to ever happen. And I always used to read his books, and I just really put myself into those places. And I really, really wanted to go and see them. And then during the night, I was a dreamer. And during the day, I was always like just pressed and almost like a slapped into the reality of my circumstances. And I never consented to that. It's like, no, like, I'm not buying this, right? No way. So I'm also very fortunate that I'm one of those first generations from Eastern Bloc of young people that were able to actually have opportunity to leave, because when I was a teenager, all the change came. So the Berlin Wall came down, and I started to realize, what's happening? There's a lot of mess in the countries. There's a lot of uncertainty and confusion and frustration and anger within the people, and especially in the generation of my mom. I call them a lost generation. They had never had opportunity to do certain things because they wanted to. So I was able to leave. And then when I had the opportunity, really, another breaking point in my life, I decided to quit the usual, the expected amazing career, amazing salary and fame, or whatever you want to call it, right? A status. that so many people are, thriving and, building their life towards. And I want to fulfill my childhood dream, and I want to travel, and I knew I want to be on a road on my own. And probably around 2 years, I realized, like after the 2 years, I realized I could easily be traveling another 2 years, even longer, or become a travel nomad, right? It's really easy once you know how it is, once you know how to travel, once you're comfortable with things a little bit more. So it's all about gaining experience. But for me, traveling gave me a really amazing opportunity to really see different places, and especially different people and how they live, and a lot of the conditioning and my assumptions how people should be living, and what I think about the world, how I think families should be living, or whatever that is, got completely rewired, changed, because I had to accept that certain cultures and certain people live their way. And guess what? There's nothing wrong with it. And who am I to judge? And, who am I to think and tell them, no, you shouldn't be doing that? Because once you allow yourself to see a little bit deeper and you have a look into their traditions or the circumstances of the nature, right, the surrounding, how the weather is behaving, and all that is really shaped how they are actually coping with it. So something that would be unacceptable in my country would be like, oh, how can they not do that, right? It's absolutely fine in other cultures. And guess what? It's not harming anyone. It's absolutely a part of their being. And there is just a different way of looking and solving things. Because essentially, if I would be born, I don't know, let's say in Nepal, my set of beliefs and my way of living or dealing with the circumstances that I have would be very different. I would have a very different conditioning. So I always strongly believe that if everyone that is interested and really want to would be traveling on their own for a short amount of time into the countries that are not speaking their language, for example, that well, into different countries that have a different way of being, I think the world would be so much nicer and so much more tolerant. And just really, it's an eye-opening thing. What you said, that you took your family and you went somewhere else. It only takes very little. If you change your environment, you snap yourself out of your habitual way of functioning. You don't even notice you are doing those habits. So if you put yourself into a new environment, it completely just, you need to be aware. Oh, where's the room? Where's the kitchen? It's new to you, right? So your brain needs to just change the routine and start creating a new routine. So it's very healthy. It's like with a learning. People should never stop learning, no matter what they do. Ideally, you should always be trying to learn something new or practice something new or literally just discover something you are curious about, because you are training your brain. It's a muscle.
Yeah, there's so much there. And I think about it early on when you were talking about taking advantage. You had to live through something so extreme and you saw what it could be like. You didn't know, but you're like, if I ever get the opportunity, I'm taking advantage of this opportunity. And you hear this a lot. I read these books about the Holocaust, and there's a book called The Librarian at Auschwitz. And it's this little girl, and she was a protector of like this book or some books, but there was this one book early on, and it was ripped up. They didn't have the full book, but she protected that book like it was everything to them. So she risked her own life to keep that book, and like jumped across the table when the guards were coming in. And if they found that was the end. And it's like when you look at someone who perhaps maybe won't read or won't do these things, it's so hard to have a perspective of what it would have been like. You can enter a book and you can try to think about it a little bit, but you would say, I'm not going to not take advantage. And so for someone to have gone through it, and I think that's let's say like an immigrant mindset, because you saw what it was like to live through these trying times and going through this and taking advantage of what you learned. And then there are no excuses, right? I don't see, and when I hear you talk when we're talking today or in the past, like you're just going to go out and do it. I'm going to travel. I'm going to figure this thing out. And I agree with you. After college, I got the opportunity to travel some, to go to Europe, to enter countries, to talk to people, to talk to strangers, to try to figure out where I'm going and talking to someone in a different language. And you have to go through that. And you also talked about you have to get out of like this habitual thing that you're in. I always find it interesting that you try to put your kids, for example, I try to put my kids in these situations to where, like you said, you don't know where the kitchen is. That was a very basic example. Like if my son goes to soccer camp, you don't know who your coach is going to be. That you don't know what drills they're going to run. You don't know where your next meal's coming. It's going to work out, and you start realizing that you are safe and you are in this place, and it kind of just shocks your system a little bit, because I always think about, or either looking back or you're looking ahead. Well, how do you get out of that and just focus on right now? And it's not easy to do, and it's really hard to do in this environment that we're in right now, in the pandemic that we're in right now. So for someone who loves to travel like you do, who explores the world, who's got this amazing mind, who's been through so much, how are you dealing right now with the pandemic? It's, you're in the UK, we're over here in the United States, and every country's dealing with it in different ways. How did you deal with it? How are you dealing with it? Because I don't think you can just go leave the country.
Well, guess what? I'm actually flying out.
Are you? Okay. I should have known.
In 10 days.
Okay.
Okay, but this is for me going back to Slovakia to spend some time with my family. And so I'm taking the opportunity to do it now during the summer. So I'm going away for the August, really. So yeah, I'm going to change scenery very soon. But to really answer your questions during these times, past months, for me, it has been very calm. I've been very calm. Obviously, I've been trying to see, hey, what's up? What's this? Who should I listen to? I'll listen to everyone. And then I make my mind what I think about this. I don't have an affinity towards any authority, in a sense that just because someone said something and they are authority now, there is a holy grail true. I think it's all about listening to different voices, different perspectives, and then making up your mind that actually makes sense to you. So this is how I approach it. And all this time, I really been spending a lot of really good quality time with myself, which is very, very liberating in a sense that once you allow for it, you really become an amazing friend to yourself. And I would say a lot of people do not know how to do this. And especially imagine what a shocker it is probably for millions and millions of people, that suddenly the busyness of moving, and I have to go there, then I have to arrange this, and I have to travel into my office, and I have thousands of meetings, and I don't have time to have a proper lunch. This busyness, like this speeding up, right? That I observed past year and a half or maybe 2 years within the society. Suddenly people are like, oh, I'm at home. Okay, online. Yeah, fine. However, right? So I think for many people, it's very uncomfortable because they haven't had an opportunity to spend a quality time with themselves. And you can still keep yourself super busy when you're at home. Don't get me wrong. Prime example is jumping on online and just spending mindless time on social media and getting triggered and whatever, okay? Or just watching TV shows or movies online. It's very easy to disappear into a different virtual world because it's an escape, right? It's for many people, it's the way to escape. They say it's a way to recharge. Yes, if you do it in a small, short doses, absolutely, because you switch your brain and you're focusing to something else. However, if you get hooked on it and you do it for many hours, your brain will assume this is a norm for me. This is the quick dopamine releases, and you get addicted to it. This is just physiological way how our body actually works, and many people have no idea. So to answer that, I really had, and still, I'm very calm. I'm very grateful that I'm feeling well and that I can help friends whenever they need it. I'm here, I'm available, but I'm not craving to be outside that much or traveling right now across, for example, country or whatever, even though almost every weekend past 3 months, I spent in nature. Just went into the forest for a walk. Sometimes with the friends, jumped in a car, went down to the beach, swam in a freezing cold water just to reset the body, just for fun. Why not?
Sure.
It's a healthy way of boosting your immune system. But yeah, I made sure that I'm outside as much as possible.
Well, it's all conditioning, it sounds like too, right? That you're seeing that you've been through a lot and this thing is not going to stop you. It might slow you down, but that slowing down might give you pause. I've been thinking about when everything stops, because like you said, it's always on. Right now in front of me, I have a computer. There's a TV behind, like in this Airbnb, and I got my phone over here. I got notes. I got my coffee. I got my thoughts. I got all these different things. But it's when everything stops and it's just you and I talking right now. and focusing on that. That's something I'm trying to do a lot of. And I can see where when that happens, I'm better for everybody. Because then when I have to go think about something that has to do with my family, well, I can just think about that and I don't have to be focused on everything else. It's very hard when you're building a business. You always want to go, like you were just saying, you're always on, you're always thinking about stuff and you have ideas and you're an entrepreneur and it's a lot. It's a lot to take on. But you use the word conditioning again. And I think there's so much to that. How do you condition yourself to get better and better at it? How do you develop these habits? So you just get in a better routine and a better system that's better for yourself and better for every single person around you, anybody that you might come across and meet, like you, Zuzana. So it's amazing having this conversation, and we absolutely have to talk. And you've already discussed about communism. And I heard you talk about communism because I was interested, and you talked about, you read a lot. You talked about actually going out, you playing sports and how activities were very important. And there were certain sets of guidelines, like they wanted you to read. And it wasn't in that like example that I used before about not having access to books. Maybe it was certain books, but you tell us, what was that like growing up and just thinking about kids today and reading and being outside and playing sports? Now there's an abundance of what don't you want to do? Like you can do anything you want to do almost if you just go outside or just explore. But talk to us a little bit about your childhood as it related to all those things.
Sure. So from a perspective of kid, you hardly ever question until you are probably 8 years old, because your prefrontal cortex is not developed. So you don't have your part of your logical brain to question things until you are 8 years old. It's still developing fully, right? Until you are probably 30 years old. This is science. So as a kid, you don't question. You are a sponge who is observing and taking things in. And one really good thing, for example, about my upbringing was that from a small town, it's 50,000 people. And it was super safe, very safe, very, very safe for me to be outside on the streets, anywhere in a town, really. It was very safe because everyone watched everyone. Everyone knew what everyone is doing, right? And the crime was like super, like nothing, right? Very tiny. Okay. So on that hand, that side of being a kid, I had the freedom to be outside and roam outside, and it was absolutely fine. And then when it came to education and sports was very big, very, very important part of the agenda. And when it came to books, we had access to all sorts of books. And there were some, obviously, that were illegal, not allowed. But no matter what you do, no matter what kind of restrictions you are trying to put upon the nation or upon the people, the black market will always exist. Always. It doesn't matter. More rules, more restrictions you press upon people. And anyone studying history, you will see this. People will be resourceful and people will create their own sub-market, their own black market. So I had access to certain, illegal books. They just happened. Okay. And I was able to read some. And literature was big because in the education, we actually, part of learning our language, which was Slovak language, was reading books. You had to read books because you would be basically marked on them and you had to write essays about them. And so there was certain literature that you had to read. I read a lot of Russian classics also, which, to be honest, remarkably amazing, like masterpieces, really amazing literature, to be honest. Nothing against that at all. But yeah, I mean, certain books and certain knowledge was not officially.
What wouldn't be allowed? What's a book that, can you think of any right now that might not have been allowed that we know of, maybe? I mean, if you don't, it's okay too.
I don't remember.
Or the type of book, was it getting into philosophy?
Let's say any books by people that ran away before the border shut down or immigrated or ran away during. So any writer that illegally escaped would be shut down. Any of those really. And any classics from Western literature, okay. But I would say there was a scarcity to access that. And especially modern or during the Cold War, any new authors that were publishing interesting works, there was no import. You could only get your hands on the classics. That was it.
Okay. That makes sense. So when you look back at your childhood, I mean, obviously it sounds like you had opportunities and you're actually pushed to do some of these things. Do you have resentment towards any of it?
Resentment in what way?
Like, why did that have to happen? Like you talked about, like people are born in different places and you had this childhood. You talked about this time when you got to put your hand in the sea for the first time. I think you're in your early 20s.
Yeah.
You miss certain things, but at the same time, it sounds to me like you just hit the speed button and you were able to go do it. It wasn't like you were rushing through anything, but you still went and did a lot of things that people don't do. You're traveling that you're talking about. But looking back, maybe when you're young, do you ever have those times when I can't believe that existed? I can't believe I had to live through communism as a child. Or do you see it more of, no, this is what made me. This is who I am today.
Yeah. When I was there and living through it, so I left my country when I was 18 years old for the first time, like into the Western world on my own. I felt a lot of frustration and anger. So like that was definitely something that I had to work through in my life, big time, because I felt suffocating. Like I was suffocating in that regime. And I didn't understand, why do I feel I thought I'm stubborn, like, really, literally, like I'm not having this, like really. But I had to be very careful about how I would, express that, because that would get me into trouble. And it was not about me getting myself into trouble. It would get my family into trouble if I would express certain things certain ways. So you have to be very, very smart how you go around this. But yeah, early stage, early years, I was very angry. I was very frustrated. And now I have no resentment whatsoever, because as you said, it's exactly what it is. It made me who I am. I completely embrace it the way it happened, because it taught me a lot of lessons, and it really expanded me, the way I look at the world and the way I'm able to then help other people, because I do have a different perspective on things because of the experience that I went through. And I strongly believe your life is your experience. It's the experience you actually go through that really strongly shapes you, who you are and how you approach things. So definitely no resentment. It's just part of my story, part of my experience. I am grateful for everything, even the hardship that it gave me, because it did shape me very strongly. I think it really built a huge, huge resilience. Like I'm very resilient in many ways in my life. And it comes to me as a second nature. And that is amazing to have, because I can really adapt to new circumstances and new situations faster.
It's a good word. Yeah, resilience is a good word. And I'm glad that you're sharing that. It wasn't always like, oh yeah, I just flipped the switch and I moved on and I was, you had to go through that time. You had to go through that struggle. And I've heard this before, like you have to struggle with it. When there's a situation there, you have to go through that struggle. And at the time, you maybe don't think about it like that. And you have to go maybe to some dark places to get through it, and then to come out this other end of it and have this perspective. And you keep using that word, and that's a great word, because that's the name of the podcast, or it's in the name of the podcast. And you have some of the best perspectives of anyone I've talked to. Not to say someone else is bad, it's just from your background.
It's different.
And I think it's very important, because there's a lot of privilege and everyone deals with stuff. So I'm not just saying, well, if someone's privileged, they're not dealing with something. No, that's not true. Like there's people out there that have privilege and they're still dealing with things. And I think it's just this time, though, you can put yourself in someone else's shoes as best you can, or listen, or just consume this stuff, these stories that you're sharing. And wow, don't take it for granted. Don't take that moment for granted. And, like example, like my wife and I, we talk about this a lot, and our kids, and, how do we put them in the best experiences and how do we give them opportunity? But we're not going to just be above them all the time or moving pieces around for them. They have to go explore. They have to go bump their heads into the wall a little bit. And I'm just curious. So as I'm kind of thinking through this thing, this is what I like to do on this podcast. What would you tell kids today that maybe were born in the UK or they're born in the United States and they enjoy playing sports outside. They enjoy their friends. They go to a pretty good school. They have a pretty good family. They have all these things going on. From someone, again, like you're not judging people based on, oh, wow, you have it so good. You have no idea what I went through. That is not you at all, Zuzana. You have a different perspective. But what would you help if someone were to come to you? Like how you would say all these different stories, and maybe you just can't answer this in a small way, but I'm just curious what you would talk to kids about if you had that opportunity to say, just see the world and you do things, read? How would you talk about that?
That is a beautiful question. Thank you for asking that. So what I would encourage them to consider is to explore things that are not familiar to them. And very much depends from their circumstances and where they are and, what they're doing and what their family beliefs are also, right? Because that really shapes them a lot. But I would really encourage them to explore things that they don't know about. And also, I would aim to try to explain to them that anytime they are in a situation that is uncomfortable for them or that is pushing their buttons, like triggering them in some way, or they're trying to learn a new skill and it's not easy, I would try to explain to them that it's very important for them to understand that tension, for them feeling the tension, is actually part of being able to create something new. It's almost like fall in love with tension, because tension is part of the creation. And this comes from a nature where anytime there is a transition from one state, one person is very comfortable and feels on top of their game, and they have everything they wanted and all that stuff, right? They come, and there is a reason why they call it a plateau, right? And they suddenly go like, oh, I'm kind of, is this it, right? And then before you're able to actually go to the next level, you need to go through a period or a moment which is very uncomfortable. It's chaotic. It's the tension. It hurts. Like you're confused. You need to go through the chaos in order to actually go to the next level. Or I don't know if it's a next level, but basically change complexity of your life, for example. So I would really encourage them to try to look into this and allow for that, because this is essentially part of the creativity. When you're creating something, you have to go through very uncomfortable tension where you have no idea how you're going to do it. It's the same with sports. When you're working out and preparing for something, you are training yourself. But part of the training of you being able to basically train and push yourself to another level, right? To break your limits, you will feel a lot of resistance. You will feel a lot of tension. It will be uncomfortable because you don't know it. So it's the same principle. So I would really encourage them to do that. And about it all, if they have a chance, go travel on your own, not with friends. You can meet friends from time to time somewhere, but go on your own. Even if you just go for a hike. Okay, if you go for a hike into the mountains or something, don't go alone. Definitely don't do that. Even if you're experienced, it's just not, it's bad practice, basically.
Yeah.
But just go out and explore. And that doesn't mean you need to go into another country. Right now it's tough. But if you can, just go. Just get out into the nature. And I think nature is the best, for me at least, is the best teacher and the most amazing artist.
You have a lot of clarity in your messaging and when you talk and how you talk about your business, how you talk about your just the questions that I ask you, you bring a lot of clarity to the topic. And because I can tell, because every time you say something, it's very clear then how I can then think about it. And that's important. And as it relates to your business as well, you talk about clarity and you talk about as well being stuck in this loops of endless internal discussions. That's the opposite. That's a lack of clarity. And you just kind of go around and around and around. That's an important piece, not only when you're just figuring out like your life, your day-to-day stuff that you have going on, but also in your business and your next steps and how you're going to proceed forward with this opportunity and strategy for your company or clients, whatnot. I want to talk a little bit about clarity, and because it's clear to me that you have clarity. So how has clarity helped you build this business and probably clarity helped you say, I need to do this. I need to get on podcasts. I need to share this story. I need this to become a part of what I'm doing on a daily basis. So clarity, to get to the clarity, I think, again, depends what clarity we're talking about. But I definitely have a clarity about who I am and what I stand for and how am I living my life. I do have that clarity. But if you would ask me this, or if you would mention this probably 15 years ago, something like that, I wouldn't know. I would be still
I kind of know, but I don't. So to have clarity about certain things and aspects in your life, I think it really comes, it is so individual. Someone even very, very young, they might have absolute clarity about who they're going to be and, what they really want to do, and they will pursue that. Where some other people will not. They will be, they will be exploring, they will be seeking. And I would say, each part of your life will give you a piece of clarity about certain things. So I think it's all about really going deep inside. Like really, it's more of an internal work to seek the answers, to seek more depth about who you are. I think for me, that's where the clarity comes from. So when I express certain things about me or my life or what I think, I don't think about it. You see, this is where the clarity actually is. It just flows through me. I do not think about it. It just comes.
It's intrinsic,
it just comes.
Right?
Yeah, that's a great word for it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, again, you've done this multiple times. You didn't always have it that way. You didn't always think that way. And I think there's a piece of that because you go through life and you meet people and all that. People see you in a certain light. I always see it like we talk about if someone was in a TV show, if they're an actor in a TV show and they're on a TV show that ran for, say, 10 years. Well, a lot of times they got typecasted that's the character that they have to play if they're going to be in the movies, if they're going to be on Broadway or in another TV show. They can't break away from that. When in actuality, that was just a character they played at that time. Exactly. Things do evolve, things do change, and you should have that ability to gain those new understandings of how you are and how you're going to behave and have new clarity in your life and, grow as a business person, grow as a person. And that what happened 15 years ago or what you went through 15 years ago, like you were talking about, doesn't necessarily relate to today. It's what helped you grow. And you can look back and say, oh, wow, I wish I could have handled that differently then. Maybe you don't have resentment because you needed to go through that, right? To then get to the stage to have the clarity that you have today, which is just this, I don't know what the word is. It's an interesting thing for sure, because everyone's going through it because we're all going on this path of hopefully, like you said, you're always learning, you're always discovering new things. I like that word, discover, that you're going to come across things and have to then manage it, what it's like today versus what it was then, but not have to worry about then because you're focused on right now. And that's what you just said. When you stop thinking about it backwards and forwards, you just right now, it just comes to you naturally.
Yeah, it does. But also, it's very important to understand that for me, in order to be able to just let it flow, I need to be in a certain state. I need to be aware of it. I need to set my intentions. So I'll give you an example that before me speaking to you, I actually sat down with myself and just quiet myself down. And I set the intentions before I jumped on a call with you to really serve you and serve your audience. That's it. I stepped into my innocence, or I stepped into my creator, if you want to, call it that way. And that really allows me. It's a very simple exercise, 1-2 minutes, but it really allowed me to center myself and connect my brain with my heart. Because when you think about it, your brain is polarity, right? You have two sides of the brain, logic, creator, right? And they always talk to each other and they chat, and a lot of wars and disagreements. And there's always this, back and forth because it's polar. It's two, right? It's duality. Your heart is one organ. It's one center. So if you're able to have that coherence, you literally, like when the people say you center yourself, right? You draw that line, right? And you connect. That's where the logical brain is chilled. Okay, whatever, let's talk. The creative brain is like, oh, okay, cool. And then the heart just expresses. So this is just the way I approach when I'm talking to people. I think intentions are so, so important. Because if you approach anything without having an intent or intention in there, a clarity, this is where the clarity comes from, then you might be distracted, you might be multitasking, or you might be overthinking. There are so many things that will kick in into your present moment. You might feel overwhelmed, all of that stuff. But I think if you set yourself into the right state with honest intention, I think it's so much easier than to have a really genuine communication and conversation with people.
I appreciate you doing that. And I appreciate you saying that and sharing that because it is important to get centered. And it's hard to do sometimes. Sometimes you just can't get through it, but it is important. And it also allows you to figure out what you do best. And I think that's when people like us come into play. if a business owner is deciding on how they want to proceed forward with this next thing, they might realize that they need to delegate something. They need to hand something off. They need a team of people. They need to hire someone. They need to outsource somewhere. It allows that decision making, which is not an easy thing either, but it has to do with clarity. Say, okay, I'm going to focus on this, and I'm going to go bring people in over here that can do that. And so I think the clarity it touches on so many different things, not only just getting centered and what you're going to talk about and feeling right about it and making the next decisions and all of that stuff. So that was a word I absolutely wanted to spend time on, and I appreciate you doing that. We have a few more minutes, and I had seen something that you had talked about, and we have a content platform called Sportsepreneur. We collide sports and business and life, and a lot of it actually gets into the things that you were just talking about in clarity and vision, and maybe even like, we're not psychologists, but you get into the psychology of things as well. But you talked about how ice hockey is like entrepreneurship. So that's the last thing I want to touch on today, because I was like, all right, we have to touch on that with our Sportsepreneur platform. I got to understand your ice hockey and entrepreneurship analogy.
So not many people know, but in my spare time, I play ice hockey still. And I actually had a long break because I went traveling. So I quit my team. I used to play here in London for a women's team, Stratton Storm. And I went traveling, I quit. And then I came back and I was not living very close by. So I said, that's it, right? And then I had a teammate. I used to play with her, but then she got pregnant. So she stopped like for 15 years. And a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago, she went back to play because her daughter was a teenager and wanted to learn. So she said, okay, we'll go. So she twisted my arm to come back and play for the team again. So, I went back and playing, and I've been playing season and a half now. And I absolutely love that sport. But now I actually see different. I really perceive it different. And apart from getting amazing workout and having a lot of fun on the ice, and it's still competitive. Like, I play a league, so it's no joke. Like, you don't want to let your team down. You can't just buff it out, right? So I'm still discovering so many lessons that the ice hockey is teaching me now, and it's more down to psychology than anything else. And I started to just talk to myself about it in a way that, like, ice hockey is like entrepreneurship because of this and this and this and that. And I was like, oh my gosh, definitely. And there are so many similarities. So let me give you a few. When you're playing a game, you are in the arena. You are on the ice and you are playing. You are not the spectator. That's exactly the same with entrepreneurship. Because when you're an entrepreneur, you are in the arena playing the game, and anyone else who is spectator watching and thinking and giving advice on what you should be doing or not doing, and they know it best, just like the spectators who have never played a competitive game in their life. They think they know the best about that sport, right? They think what needs to be done. And then, they go like, why did you do that? You should have, passed it to another player. And it's like, you have no idea. The takeaway from this is I only listen to people that are playing the game, or that have played the game and they have felt, they sweated, they got knocked down because they've been part of it. Anyone else who's got an opinion about something, fine, it's their opinion, but I don't listen to them. I do not take their words to my heart, or I just don't follow because they have not experienced. Because being an entrepreneur, it's a lifestyle. It's a journey. And if you never experience that on your skin, you have the skin in a game, you don't have that 360 view of that experience. You only have a snippet that you see. So this is why ice hockey for me and entrepreneurship are so similar. Another one is, in ice hockey, you will get hit. There is no way you're not going to get hit and knocked down. If you tell me that, you never play. Full stop.
Right.
It just doesn't happen. Because it will even happen by accident because it's such a fast game. So entrepreneurs, the same. You will get hit, knocked down. It's going to bloody hurt. And guess what? You're going to have to get up and play. You cannot just be there on the ice, faking it, right? Whatever. No, because your teammates then are going to actually, slap you, literally.
Right.
Because if you are playing the game, and obviously if you're not injured or anything else, you get up as soon as possible because that game is not going to wait for you and your team needs you. So, entrepreneurship is the same. Your team needs you. If you are slapped down, if you are knocked down, and you're hurting, you're going to suck it up and you're going to get up and still skate and do your best, or get replaced immediately by other players so you can, you can breathe. And then entrepreneurship, when you start, you are on your own because you're starting on your own. But essentially, team and individual, it's always about the teams. Essentially, you're going to need a support. And I'm not talking about you need to now hire someone into your business immediately, but you will need a mental support. You will need your almost like an invisible team to support you. It's never an alone journey. You will get that support and you should seek for it. And, in ice hockey, no matter how good a player is, and yes, you have exceptional talents, that's an individual talent, but they cannot win the game on their own, full stop. Good luck. You can't.
Yeah,
you
right.
Can't.
Yeah.
In entrepreneurship, you need a game plan. Any sports, you should have a game plan. And another one, coach, right? Have you ever seen any, ice hockey team or whatever basketball team without a coach to win anything? Leadership or mentorship is the same as when you're an entrepreneur, you should seek a coach. You should seek someone to learn from, have that support, whatever works for you. Coaching or having a coach, for some, it doesn't work. Having a mentor who has done it and been there, that might be the way for you to go. There's a difference between coach and mentor. Some entrepreneurs don't understand this, but they should hopefully educate themselves, or they will learn a hard way. And then, like another one, I say, like work ethic, right? You have to work on your skills. And one thing, in ice hockey and learning skating really, really well, guess what? You're not going to learn it in 1 year. It just doesn't happen. Like, I always improve my skills in hockey. Always. There's always something I'm working on, always. Because this is like, I don't know how to skate 100% in a certain way. There are much better skaters than me because I have not been practicing consistently. But don't get me wrong, I'm good. Like, I'm a good player. Like, for the years that I've been able to play, but I know there are much better, skaters. However, I have a different skills. So it's all about knowing advantages that you have, individual advantages that you have on the ice, and know your strength. It's the same for entrepreneur. You cannot do everything. You should know your strength. I have a long list. We can talk about it until tomorrow, because there are so many things that are just like ice hockey and entrepreneurs. There are so many similarities in there. And I would say it's also a good way of trying to talk to someone who has no idea what it is to be, or what it means to have your own business or be an entrepreneur, when you are able to compare it to something that they understand. So any team sports, you could pick any team sports and you could talk to that person. It's like this because of this. I like joining the dots and explaining certain ideas using sports, literally using sports, because a lot of people can relate to that because they either watch it or they've been, practicing. So there are so many similarities.
Yeah. I always said it's one of the ultimate icebreakers, right? And if it's within someone that you would have a conversation with and they like sports and you like sports or play sports or all those different things, it's such an easy way to start a conversation. That's first. But like you just said, when you can explain something and relate it to this, and like you're talking about ice hockey, what a perfect way to have that conversation. There's a few things I want to touch on, because you talked about don't be a spectator. And it's interesting, my wife, Jessica, talks a lot about this with our kids. There's an easy way to consume. You talked about it very early on in our conversation. You can pick up your iPad, you can pick up your phone, and you can watch for days. You can play games for days. And there's nothing wrong with consuming. Like, to read a book is consumption, right? But what type of consumption are you doing? But be on the production end of it. Don't be a spectator. Play the game. So that is a huge piece. That's not only when you talk to your kids, you're also, let's be honest, we're talking to ourselves a lot of times. I do that. Oh, yeah. I know. I'm not speaking to my wife.
Absolutely.
Like, so those are the different things that you do. But like, as we relate to kids, it's like, well, we want them to become the best versions of the things that people that they can become. So if it's good enough for them, well, it's obviously good enough for us. But not being a spectator is a huge thing. And like I said, my wife, Jessica, talks about that all the time, or not all the time. And because you did it in a way that's very to the point, and then you kind of move on to the next thing. It's the hard truths right? It's those little things that someone like yourself or someone like my wife can say it, and it's, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And that's what, then you go act on it. And how does that fit with you? You mentioned the phrase skin in the game. 1,000%. Nassim Taleb has the book out, Skin in the Game, incredible book that just talks about, people that just say things and have had these throwaway comments or these pundits, or people that you've never actually done that. You've never lived this experience. That's something we really need to take to heart. And I love how you said it, like, just don't listen to those people that have never had skin in the game before. And there's so much. You talk about the coaching aspect of it. You hear about professional athletes, some of the best athletes in the world, and not even their own head coach. They have a special coach for them, a shooting coach, a swing coach, a fitness coach, and just all these different things. Yep. So glad that we brought up this conversation to compare ice hockey, because you can do it, like you just said, compare ice hockey to entrepreneurship, but you can do it in so many different levels. And you obviously have a passion for that. And when you have a passion for something, and then you have these stories to share about it, that's when you get out there and have these conversations on these podcasts and have blogs and use social media, because it creates this awareness of what you're doing. It creates this attention, and people are like, wow, Zuzana, I want to talk to you more. And I could talk to you, like you said, we can talk till tomorrow and come up with all these different stories. And I appreciate your time, your energy, your passion, and your clarity, and the strategy that you're going through right now of building your business and using content to tell your story, to open up these opportunities. And not only that, just to make yourself better, right? And make those people around you are better. And so I really appreciate all that time and energy that you've brought today. I'm here in Asheville, North Carolina. You're in London. And it's amazing how you can just connect now. And hopefully one day we can get past this pandemic and we can meet. It's great to spend time with someone like yourself. And, with that said, what's a way other people can spend time with you or get to know you or learn a little bit more about you? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So people can definitely find me on my website, which is zuzanadobro.com. And that's ZUZANADOBRO.com.
Excellent. Zuzana, thank you so much again for your time and energy and passion and clarity. Like I said a little while ago, I'm going to keep saying it because it's just obvious, and it's been great. And to hear your stories of where you came from to where you are today, and not letting the past dictate what you are today. It's amazing. So thank you for connecting with us, finding us on this podcast so we could have this conversation.
Eric, thank you so much for this opportunity and for having me. And hopefully speak to you soon again.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things about CADSource is the opportunity to chat with amazing business leaders and entrepreneurs. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you want to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn or visit us at cadsource.com. Thank you for listening to this CADSource production, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time. This episode exists because of CADSource. CADSource is your content team. You know how many business leaders need help communicating their story? That's what we do. Content strategy, creation, and distribution for business leaders. This provides opportunities, relationships, and a platform for you and your business. Why do we do this? Because at CADSource, we exist to help you create and share amazing content. And yes, you should have a podcast. We'll help you. Learn more by visiting CADScontent.com.